In the last lesson, I used the word proportional, and in today's lesson, we're really going to get into that a lot more, and we're going to define it. So let's look at this situation, and then I'll break down how proportions comes into play and what this even has to do with ratios. Okay, so let's read through. A county superintendent of highways is interested in the number of different types of vehicles that regularly travel within his county. In the month of August, a total of 192 registrations were purchased for passenger cars and pickup trucks. The 192 represents both the cars and the trucks. At the local Department of Motor Vehicles, we know that as a DMV. The DMV reported that in the month of August, for every 5 passenger cars registered, there were 7 pickup trucks registered. So that is our ratio. That's our beginning part. And we want to know how many of each type of vehicle were registered in the month of August. Okay, so I'm going to write our ratio today as a fraction. We have 5 to 7, and this is cars to trucks. And we know in all there were 192 vehicles in August. All right, so that is both cars and trucks. So how does proportions go into this? When I use the word proportion or proportional, what I really mean is that we have a larger equivalent ratio. So the ratio stays the same. It's just larger. So it's as if I'm mixing something, I want to make sure the mixes still have the same amount of ingredients so that it always tastes the same. It's kind of like that. So think back on what we talked about when we learned about tape diagrams. I'm going to try and draw a tape diagram from scratch to represent my cars and my trucks. We know that there are 5 cars. See if I can make it fit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 trucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I might need one more in there. Let's do my little count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's my 5 cars and my trucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I squeezed it in there, not to scale, definitely not to scale Math Marvels. To 7 trucks. And in total, what would you see here? So I have my 5 cars, my 7 trucks. I also have 12 vehicles total. Okay, I can see this here. I can draw another tape diagram. Like, I know that's not enough, but I want to keep the ratio again. So I could just draw another one and do another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trucks. And again, keep it the same ratio. 5 cars, another 7 trucks, another 12 vehicles. I'm just going to abbreviate it. So now, where I started with 5 to 7, I have a new ratio where now I have 10 cars and 14 trucks. The parts are staying the same. I keep adding on the same amount of parts, and that's what makes these equivalent to each other. I don't have the same number of cars, but they are equivalent. My ratio stays equivalent. So how do I keep on going? How can I keep on going until I get to 192 vehicles? That's really tough, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How can we make sure that we have something that's proportional, meaning we find the larger equivalent ratio, without having to draw tape diagrams, without making a super long table? Is there a more efficient way of doing this? And I will tell you, yes, there is. I'm going to hit pause for a second so you can jot this part down. Especially its definition that we're going to work with for today. So let's look at some stuff here. Just to get our mind thinking, how many total cars did we have represented in 12 vehicles? 5 cars, 7 trucks. How many total vehicles were registered? We need to get to 192 vehicles. So that's going to be a lot if we have to keep on going by 12s. And our goal is, can we write a ratio representing the total diagram units of total vehicles? So watch how I do this. I'm going to use a new system that you've probably seen in your classroom called Math. I'm going to just put this here. And the first M is to make a table, so I want more space. I'm going to draw a box. And in here, I'm going to put some numbers. Being that we're talking about total pieces, I'm going to have cars, put a V for vehicles. Okay, so I know that there are 5 cars for every 12 vehicles. I want to know how many cars when I have 192 vehicles. So I've made my table and now I've added my numbers. So now I want to test my patterns. I want us to think for a minute, how can I get from 12 to 192? Like if I kept on drawing those diagrams and I kept on making 12 and 12 and 12 and 12, how many 12s would it take to get 192? Can we figure that out? What math would you use for that? Well, I know my numbers are getting bigger, they're growing, they're multiplying by the same amount. So I'm going to use my fact family to say 12 times something. This is my thinking. 12 times some number makes 192. So what if I did 192 divided by 12 to get that number? That is something we know how to do, Math Marbles. We are well aware of this. So I'm going to use my long division, divide by 12. Goes into 72 6 times. So it would take 16 sets of 12 to get to 192. I would have to draw 16 tape diagrams to get to 192. So now think of my cars. If I drew 5 sets of cars 16 times, what would I get? How many cars would I have altogether? So you can just keep on adding 5 plus 5 plus 5 16 times. Or you can just do 16 times 5. And when you do that, you would get 80. And so here you go, Math Marbles. I've used a pattern to help me find the unknown numbers. So when I have 192 vehicles, 80 of them will be cars. I'm catching myself with my language. So does that part make sense? We're going to use math again because now we're going to solve for the number of pickup trucks registered. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw my square. For math, I'm going to make a table. And this time we're talking about trucks and vehicles. So what is our first ratio that we know? We know that when there are 7 trucks for every 12 vehicles. And we want to get to 192 vehicles. So now we've added our numbers. Let's test a pattern. How can I go from 12 to 192? We already did this work, Math Marbles. We know we would multiply by 16. So we're going to do the same thing with 7. We're going to multiply it by 16. 7 times 6 is 42. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 is 11, that's 112. So that answers my question. There are 112 trucks. And 192 total vehicles. I'm going to box this off so we have it and we can see everything. So hopefully that was really helpful. Look at how, again, I could make a tape diagram, I could make a table, I could just keep on adding repeatedly, but this would end up taking a lot more time and effort. And using our math brain, we can create a proportion by making a table and creating another ratio that is larger and equivalent just by testing the pattern. I'm going to add our math system into our class notes so we can begin using it during the rest of this lesson. Hope this was helpful, Math Marbles, and keep practicing. I will see you in the next lesson.